Yay!
Yeah, what is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Monday schedule to join us tonight on Ginger Run Live, episode number 165. We're getting up there.
Wow.
every
I can't
week.
just say that every week.
Well, you got to, because
I was thinking of something else that I could have said, but
what were you gonna say? Now I'm super curious.
That's my height in centimeters.
Wow, your Canadian showing. Very excited about tonight's show because we have a guest on that's just an absolute badass. When it comes to obstacle course racing, dominated the sport. Also in ultra running, she's dabbled a little bit and she's dominated the sport. So we're going to talk to her all about some of the obstacle course racing leading into ultra. And in the last year, she's actually been dealing with an injury. I feel like she's back, and it's going to be fun to hear a little bit about what it's like to be at an elite level, suffer an injury, have to deal with all of that, be patient with it, and come back from it. It's going to be great. We have Amelia Boone on the show tonight. Very excited. We also have adult beverages, which is also very good. No Pop-Tarts, unfortunately, for our guests, but
no Pop-Tarts.
Maybe we'll eat a ton tonight. So sit back, relax, everybody. Here we go. Ginger Runner Live begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay!
Yeah.
Kim is in the middle of typing.
I'm trying to communicate,
which makes the yays harder. Right. Happy Monday, everybody. As I just mentioned in the pre-show, we have a pretty awesome guest tonight. She's a badass obstacle course racer, a champion in the sport. You can look at her resume through obstacle course racing and just go, oh, she's won basically everything. And also in ultra running, has an incredible story, just getting started in the sport, but also dominating. It's going to be really great to talk to her tonight. She's also back from injury, and it's a pretty hardcore injury. So we're going to talk to her all about what it's like to go through that at an elite level, come back from it, and where her goals and stuff like that are now. So let's just welcome her to the show. The one, the only, Ms. Amelia Boone.
Yay!
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to finally get you on the show. I think we first met at States a couple years ago. I think it was it last year or 2 years? It must have been last year.
It was if I was on crutches, it was last year.
You were on crutches.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was last year. I remember that.
Yeah.
Good to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Kim and I are also excited to open our adult beverage tonight.
I will open one with you.
Nice.
I did not bring you Pop-Tarts, but this is toaster pastry beer.
What? What?
It's a 21st Amendment. It's an India style red ale.
That sounds good.
Yeah, can we trade?
It's pretty phenomenal. I know. My only concern is that it expired January 2016. I think I've been hoarding them for too long. So if I keel over and die during the show.
It's like fermenting.
Let's make sure.
Fine wine.
It's going to be like super potent.
You know. Tastes the same.
Okay.
I don't really believe in expiration dates anyway.
Does it taste like toaster pastry? I think that's the big question.
Oh, yeah. It's got like undertones of toaster pastry.
Our adult beverage, it's lackluster in comparison, but ours was provided to us by one of our viewers.
Our viewer is in the chat room right now that actually sent this.
This is from Scout. So Scout had provided us with a bunch of beers, actually. So the last week we've kind of been enjoying the variety that they sent. And tonight, I actually am really excited about this. Hermit Thrush Brewery, Potweet Sour Pale Ale with local hops, but I'm
excited about this.
Fairly high in the percentage, so I would pour Kim a little bit.
I like the bird on the front. What's the percentage?
Let's take a look here. I think last time I looked, it was pretty high.
Last time you looked?
Last time
How many have you had?
I've already had a couple of them before I even looked.
No, this one's high.
This one's a little bit lower. This one's 5.2%.
Oh, okay.
This was, I think it was the other ones that were really high.
We won't be super
I'm
sloshed.
rocking 7.6.
All right.
And a tall boy.
And a tall boy.
That's
cheers.
Awesome. So cheers to you. Let's start, I think, by talking a little bit about, go ahead.
Let's just maybe let the chat room know what's going on for those of you who are new here this week. I will be pulling live questions from the chat room. So if you guys have questions for our guest Amelia, please ask them throughout the show. And the chat room tends to move pretty quickly. So if for some reason you're asking a question and I'm not seeing it, just please ask it again.
Yeah, and it doesn't give us the scrolling ability to go back too far. So yeah, if Kim for some reason skips over it, just post it again, and we'll try to get to as many of them tonight as possible, because I know we're going to have a bunch of questions for Amelia. Let's start a little bit.
I saw my mom writing in a bunch of questions.
Yeah, right. Your mom has 17 different accounts.
I know, right? She's really technologically savvy. Let's go back a little bit in time, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention just your incredible resume through obstacle course racing, Spartan, World's Toughest Mudder, stuff like that. Was that your first foray into endurance events? Were you, did you grow up running track or cross country, that sort of thing, or was it obstacle course racing? It was really obstacle course racing. I played team sports. My main sport was softball. So if you can imagine, I actually was a pitcher, and I played softball, I played soccer, I played basketball, but I was good, but I was never like a standout all-star. And I never did any of the cross country running. I couldn't fathom why you would run for fun. Honestly, I was like, why would you go out? And it didn't make any sense to me. So it's kind of funny to look back on that now. So I didn't play any sports. I played some in high school, didn't play in college, went to law school, didn't do anything. And then at the ripe old age of 27, 28, decided, hey, this is going to be my thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And was that specifically obstacle course racing? Was it something that drew you into that, or what was kind of your first dose of it?
I was a first-year associate at a law firm in Chicago, and I had some friends that were like, hey, look at this race online. It was a Tough Mudder, and I saw these people crawling through mud and jumping through electric wires. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. I have no idea what possessed me to want to do it. And so I trained really hard for the next 6 months for it, trying to be able to do a single pull-up, to be able to do all the obstacles. Failed miserably. I remember getting out on the course and falling off the monkey bars immediately. But there was something about it, and I think it was on a ski resort up in Wisconsin, which actually really, it's not mountains like we think they are, but they're hills. They're nice little ski hills. And I really just loved running up and down those hills so much with the little obstacles sprinkled in. So I immediately signed up for another one. And the next one I signed up for was the 24-hour version, the World's Toughest Mudder.
That's the second one you signed up for?
So I dive right in.
Yeah. Oh, this is fun. This is too easy. Let's just do this for a day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No idea. Nothing in my history had ever. I ran a half marathon in preparation for Tough Mudder, and that's to this day has been the only road race I've ever run. So
wow. That's incredible. I guess the mental side of that, of going from a shorter Tough Mudder event to a 24-hour event, did you have any idea what you were in for? Were you like, I needed a bigger challenge, I need a full 24-hour challenge? Or what was it that made you want to make that big of a leap?
Yeah, I think it was the first time they'd ever decided to do this. They touted this as this event, and they're like, okay, a Tough Mudder is fun. Now you're going to do it for 24 hours. It's in New Jersey in December. And so I think the temperature was in the 20s, and you're in and out of water and things like that. And I think for me, it was being on the ground floor of this new event. And there was this group of us that kind of mobilized on social media, around Facebook, about 200 of us that were trying to figure out exactly how you approach a race like that. And everyone was like, oh, you're going to have to, wear a wetsuit for 24 hours and run in a wetsuit to maintain your body heat. And other people were like, no, you're going to die if you run in a wetsuit for 24 hours, and there was just, nobody knew what was going on. We had no idea. So I think it was really kind of cool to be on that level at the beginning.
And this was back in 2011?
11, yeah.
And you ended up placing second in that event. I'm just curious, did you have any idea that you had it in you? I think that's the big question, is you do these events, especially, I've done Spartan race, and you do it and you go, well, that was fun. That was different. And I can do one ab or one sit up now. Yeah. Or, to make that, to bridge that gap and then to place second, did you have an impetus or an idea that maybe this is something that I should look into?
I almost quit after the first lap. I finished the first lap, and I was so cold that I huddled in my tent in my pit area for the next 3 hours, trying to get my body heat back up. And then the thing that kept me going was I was like, I paid $500 to do this. I was like, I am going to keep going. And honestly, so only 11 people finished the race. 1,000 people signed up. Only 11 people finished. So when you say I placed second,
for women. I mean, I think there were only 2 women that finished. So
Oh, man. Wow.
so it was, yeah. I mean, I think it was in the later on in the hours and as it progressed that I realized like I could actually do that. And then if I actually trained for it and figured things out, that it was kind of where I excelled and thrived.
I mean, this information is readily available to those who might be watching the show and want to go Google Amelia Boone. But the next year you came back, you won it, first place female, but second place overall, which is also extremely impressive. At that point, had you caught the bug? I mean, was it to the point where I love doing this? I like putting myself through these events, and then it's off to the races, essentially?
Yeah, I think I did the World's Toughest Mudder in 2011, and then I actually started doing these things called death races, which are now defunct. And so I signed up for those, and that was kind of an offshoot of Spartan. And those were like 48 hours to 72 hours of chopping wood and running through the mountains in Vermont. And so I really kind of found this kind of endurance racing, and I loved the long events. So I started off doing all these long events. I actually worked down from those. It was actually not like for like a year or year and a half into when I first did an obstacle race that I ran like a Spartan sprint, which was, like the 3-mile version. I started with I did it all backwards. Started off with the super long stuff, worked down the short stuff. And I've always hated the short stuff. I like the long stuff, which for me then later on led to me being interested in ultras. So.
Interesting. We do have live questions from the audience. I want to remind those who maybe are tuning in live. If you're in the chat room or if you're watching elsewhere, come to the YouTube page. There's a little chat room there. And there's already talk about drinking games. People are drinking whenever I touch my beard or when I use the word dovetail, which I use all the time.
Oh, that's your word?
Yeah, because it dovetails, it transitions.
I think my favorite drinking game suggestion was every time I give you a weird face when you try and make a bad joke.
Probably 90% of our shows are Kim gets.
I was saying you be smashed, huh? Right?
Yes, totally smashed. But yeah, we have live questions. So Kim, go for it.
Yeah, let's take a couple of those now. Question from Kimosabi75 in the chat room. Amelia, you mentioned the death race. Kimosabi is asking, can you describe some of the challenges or obstacles in the death race?
Yeah, the death race is one of those things that's really hard to describe unless you're there. So it doesn't really have a start. You don't know when it finishes. But a lot of things, so you'll be given we were always given a packing list. So that it may have been a Greek to English dictionary or a Bible. There was one time it was like 20 pounds of pennies. And throughout the race, you would have to sometimes use these things. There was one time we had to bring loincloth and a sewing kit, and we had to end up sewing a loincloth and then wearing that for part of the race. There are other times that you would carry a cement bucket or cement bag up to the top of a mountain and then have to memorize a Bible verse up there and then run down to the bottom of the mountain and recite the Bible verse back. And if have been up for 48 hours, that's really hard to do. Swam like 3 miles in a reservoir. You never know what you're getting into. And most of it is very, very unpleasant.
I mean, I've followed a bit of this sport just kind of as an outsider's perspective. And, I have a nephew who loves these things. And he's done a couple of these types of events where you have to bring random items. And like you said, you use them throughout the course of the duration. And in my mind, I'm going, these are just people who are putting on these events that just want to mess with people, right? There's some degree of that. How out there can we get? Or what can we get away with? I mean, is there any end to these types of events being more and more difficult? Do you see them getting crazier from here?
Well, there was actually an end. I mean, the death race ended for a lot of reasons, but I personally think a lot of it had to do with liability too. I mean, this is the attorney in me talking, but it's really hard. It got very popular, and to have people out there chopping wood and swinging axes and sleep deprived and things like that, it's just a hard event to really control. So there was part of me that were like, is it just suffering for the sake of suffering? But the thing is that the lessons that I took away, and I'm sure that people who run ultras like you feel this too, is that in your darkest moments, you come out of those and then like you learn so much from that. And so I think that's really like the point has always been to me of these things. So.
I mean, it's a common theme, I think, when we talk about ultra running or when we have ultra runners on the show. There's usually some reason that they get into it, or there's some degree of pain that they like to push themselves through because they tend to find themselves in some degree. It's why I started. It's why Kim started. You know, there's something about pushing yourself to your limits. Do you feel like you've ever attempted an event that has pushed you to the absolute limit?
I quit an event. I quit a death race. I DNF'd when I got frostbite in my toes really bad one time. And I don't know, I mean, I found a physical limit. Like I found a point where I was in a river in Vermont in February and it was like 0 degrees outside. And they had us in there doing stuff for hours. And I was just like, at this point, it's not worth it anymore. Like it's not worth, like I still have issues with the frostbite was on my toes. And so I found like that, like, you know what, pack it in and save it for another day. Mentally and emotionally, I don't know if I've ever found that limit yet, probably, which is why I keep doing these things.
Yeah. And I think Kim also has a question that will dovetail with that.
Everyone drink.
Everyone drink.
Dovetailing off of that, there's actually been a lot of questions in the chat room. Would you be interested in doing the Barkley? Speaking of pushing oneself.
Ultimate bucket list. Yes. It's funny. It's actually a question that I get all the time. And everyone's like, when I applied, not this past year because I was coming off of injury the year before, and didn't get in. So I'm planning forward. I'm going to apply every year, you know, and I'm planning to completely be humbled. If I ever get in, I know it's going to be horrific, but it's one of those things. It's just, I have to do, you know, and I have to do, and I want to do it so badly. So I need to get better at orienteering for sure. Definitely for sure.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the common consensus is those who have been there that we've talked to, you know, orienteering such a huge part of it if you're unfamiliar with the event. But we have talked about on this show a number of times about will a woman ever finish Barkley? Right. And your name has come up a number of times with those who are familiar with the event, like, oh, you know, Amelia might be able to do it. And like, has she ever done it? Like, would she want to do it? So that's kind of cool to hear that you have actually applied.
Absolutely. If you could possibly pay off somebody to be in it, which is not, you know, possible to last, but like, I know, you know, you're just up to like the Barkley gods to let you in or not. So, but yeah.
So it's cool to see. So the transition from OCR to Ultra, what was the impetus behind that? What was the reason behind, like, I would rather just run a long distance rather than, you know, suffer for 24 hours or whatever. Was there some reasoning behind that?
I think it was a number of things. I think after being in obstacle racing for 5 years, winning, you know, I won World's Toughest Mudder 3 times, Spartan Race World Championships. And I wanted a new challenge and I wanted something a little bit different. And what I realized is that the reason that I loved obstacle racing was the courses I was drawn to and the courses that I did really well on were all the ones on ski resorts up and down like double black diamonds. And what I could do is I could outrun women up hills, and I was better at downhilling, and I could carry a lot of heavy things. The carrying the heavy things doesn't translate to ultras, but I was like, look, if this running up and down mountains, if that's what I'm really enjoying about obstacle racing, then maybe ultra running is a natural transition or a natural thing to try next. And so I think for me, I got into obstacle racing because it was different and it was new. And I'm always looking for that next thing. I just didn't want to be complacent. And so for me, it was, and still is, it's that the longer obstacle races, I still am really drawn to, you know, World's Toughest Mudder, I'll always go back to that, things like that. But I see really the distance is where I'm the happiest. So that was kind of the impetus for moving over. And I was like, and I still don't plan on giving up obstacle racing, but it was just okay, can I kind of dabble in both, you know, and see how that's going. But yeah.
I mean, I know that you're fairly new to ultra running, but the races that you've done are not easy. You know, just knowing that your first big ultra was Georgia Death Race, which is notorious for being awful. I mean, I think they take a giant snake at the orientation and just go, hey, here's a snake that could kill you. This is out there. I don't know. I haven't been there, but I've heard some incredible things that this race is gnarly. So
it is gnarly.
Are you looking for that in ultras? Are you looking for those more hardcore events?
Definitely. I think for me, it's I want gnarlies, but when I talk to my coach, I'm like, I want as much elevation as possible. I want to climb, looking at sky running and things like that. I want gnarly and I want hard. Obviously, you don't want to get in over your head, though. Everything in my history with obstacle racing, at least, has always been like, go big, just start in way over your head.
Right.
And then
I'm surprised your first ultra wasn't 100, like 100 miler.
Right.
Probably because most ultras, most hundreds require you to qualify for them first. So I remember I did the Georgia Death Race and I was like, yes, I have a lottery ticket for Western States. Never going to get in with this, but I have one. Yeah. So
I think we can start talking a bit about Sean O'Brien and the injury and stuff like that. Just because that's the most recent sort of event for you. But Sean O'Brien 100K is a notorious Southern California race of being hot, being extremely difficult. I've done the 50K there once. It was the first year they did the 100K, and I do not. I am so glad I did not do the 100K because it's tough. It's super difficult. Yeah. It's a long race. It's always really hot. But that you got second place there and you got your ticket to Western States. This was last year, 2016. Yeah. What was it like to get a golden ticket? So now you didn't have to apply. You basically you earned it. And what were you thinking at that time as far as, states on your radar, and was it something that you were excited about or, knew about?
Yeah. I mean, I was stoked. I signed up for Sean O'Brien with I was like, oh, well, okay, I didn't get in through the lottery for Western States. Maybe I can just run my way in. But I didn't really think that I could because I'd run the Georgia Death Race, which was on my end was a complete disaster. I spent 10, 15 miles of it puking off the side of the course, like I got through it, but it was like, it was disastrous. So I was just like, well, give it a go and why not? And we'll see what happens. But I also knew like Devin Yanko was running it. And I just met, when I moved to the Bay Area, she reached out with open arms to me and like welcomed me in. We had mutual friends. And so I was like, oh God, if she's running this and she's like really, really good and there's no chance for me. But, so I finished second and all of a sudden it was like this new world opened up and I knew about states and I was so excited. And to me, it just gave me a purpose again. It was for me, it was like going back to 2011 World's Toughest Mudder and preparing for that. Cause it was something that I had no idea, like how to prepare for or what to do. So
now I'm really curious about the injury and what happened. I know very little of the specifics.
There's a lot of people in the chat room that are like, tell us
what happened.
Yeah.
What
Why
happened?
didn't you run states? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's your classic story is that I was training and increasing volume for Western States, and about 7-8 weeks out, was out on a run, and I'd been having like I have a completely torn labrum in my right hip, as do a lot of runners. Everyone has a torn labrum, and so I've had for years just kind of weird psoas adductor type of issues around the right leg. And so I was having some of those pains for a few weeks before, but I was like, whatever, it's just like my labrum kicking in, blah, 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 blah. Well, it turned out that it was actually a stress fracture in my femur. And it was actually on one run. It was like capping off 100-mile week. It was like totally like stereotypical how you get a stress fracture. And then, like hobbled 10 miles back to my car. I was literally in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone service, on a trail. And you're like, what do you do? Like, what am I going to sit down and wait for somebody to like run by me and then carry me? Like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And yeah, so stress fracture in the femur, and the first MRI wasn't that good. Like, it wasn't a good quality MRI. So they didn't see how large it was. So I was like, oh, okay. It was devastating too, because like with Western States, you realize you don't get a second chance, like you don't get a roll over your admission to the next year. You're done. There's nothing, like you can't run. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really tough process for me, being so excited for something and then having it feel like the bottom drops out. And it's not just people like, oh, there'll be other races. I'm like, it's not just a race. So I whined and cried and kicked and screamed for a good week or two before I kind of like started to then really process everything. But yeah, the injury ended up being the fracture ended up being much, much larger than we originally saw when we did a follow-up MRI. So I ended up on crutches for about 3.5 months from that. So it was much longer. Initially, it was like going to be 4 weeks on crutches, back to running in 8, and that was not the case.
So it basically was something that took you out immediately, and then were the doctors anticipating that it would be a quicker recovery, and then the MRI revealed that no, that was not going to be the fact, or was it a self-diagnosis of to take the extra time?
No, it was definitely the first one. When they first looked at it, they were like, oh, it's not that bad. And then when we did a follow-up 4 weeks later, because I tried to come off of crutches, and I was like, it still hurts to walk. Like I can't. And so they did another MRI, and they're like, oh. So that was the number one lesson for runners out there. If you ever go have an MRI, ask about what kind of magnet they're using and, what the power is and things like that. Because if you have a crappy MRI, it will actually miss a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
As someone who's suffering currently from an adductor injury, I'm sitting here going, oh no.
I have a stress fracture.
A stress fracture. I guess what were some of the signs for you?
Yeah.
Was it an abrupt thing, or was it a gradual, it just kept getting worse? I know you talked about the 100-mile week and that sort of thing, or was it abrupt?
Well, it was funny. It was very it just felt like I had a super tight adductor for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I kept stretching, foam rolling it and stuff like that. But I think the key for me is that it wasn't responding to the normal things that I would do for a muscular issue. And that's kind of like, there was something in the back of my head that was like, this maybe isn't right. But when it actually, on that run where I hobbled back, there was a moment where it was like lightning bolts down the leg, where I was like, okay, yeah, this is not muscular anymore. So
that took you out for a number of months. Just the process of dealing, I guess, kind of describe what you went through knowing that maybe States was out of the question. Was there a moment that you had to make the call? I mean, what was that like?
I was also going to say, we have our resident radiologist, Danuch, in the chat room.
Danuch is in the chat room.
And he was like, he's really bummed out about the low quality MRI.
Right. Well, it was, I learned my lesson. Yeah, I mean, I knew immediately because I was obviously, it was 6-7 weeks out. So I had to make the call. I had to make the announcement that I was done with States. But then also, I mean, I was also planning on doing my entire obstacle racing season too. So obstacle racing probably starts up in May, and then our championships are in September, October, November.
Right.
So I kind of told everyone, I'm like, okay, well, first half of the season is crap, but I'll be back for the World Championships. Not a problem, And so it was processing the loss of States was really, really difficult for me. But I still was like, I think I kind of just was in denial about everything that was going on, because in my mind I was like, but I can still come back for Spartan Race World Championships. I can still come back for World's Toughest Mudder in the fall. Like I still have that, which then led to more disaster later on down the road. So.
Our viewers, our audience, we're everyday runners. We're mid packers, we're elite mid packers, or front of the mid pack, back of the packers. We have the whole gamut, and it's going to happen. People are going to get injured and that sort of thing, and they're going to get taken out of their favorite thing, whether it's a pastime, a hobby, or whatever, for a certain period of time. So for you, mentally, do you have any advice for those who might run into a similar situation where they have to leave something they love?
Yeah, it's interesting for me because the longest I had ever been out from running was like 3 weeks before this. I had had knee surgery, but it was like a meniscus, and I was literally back up and running. I had knee surgery, and then I went and I won World's Toughest Mudder 8 weeks later. And so it was one of those things where in my mind I was like, stress fracture, I got it, and then I realized it's a bit different. But like the enormity of it is very kind of difficult to process. So I tell everyone, you go through these stages of grief and like absolutely let yourself grieve for a bit. But what I did, and I think this is really helpful, is I was like, I'm giving myself 10 days to eat all the ice cream, drink all the wine, cry, do everything, and then done. Cut it off, you know, and then really focus on, you know, what can I do now or what can I do next? And everyone told me, and this was I put together this like top 10 list of things to not say to an injured athlete. And the number one thing is like, you'll be back stronger, you know, because even though it's true, you're like, go away when they tell you that. But I think another one was also that this is a great time to pick up other hobbies. And what I realized is that, so I tried to like figure out what I would do, like what are my other hobbies? And I actually ended up writing a lot of blog posts and series of blog posts on injuries. And that was actually very, very good kind of like introspective process for me.
Yeah.
But number one is I was like, no, I'm not giving up my identity as an athlete. I'm not giving up my identity as a runner. And so the thing that I found was really helpful, as hard as it was to stay involved in the sport. And I know a lot of people were like, because I did at first, I unfollowed all of my racing friends because I couldn't bear to see Instagram photos. I couldn't bear to see race results. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to go up to Western States because like, it's there, it's in your face. You're like, I should be running this. But I did. I went up, I crewed for Devin. I mean, I was not very helpful because I was on crutches, but I felt like I was helpful. I was like, go you. I tried to like tap people on the ass with my crutches as they ran by. But I think for me, I think it was key to like still go to all the races and to still be involved and to not lose that. And I actually found myself getting closer to the running community because of that, as opposed to distancing myself. So that's my 2 cents on it, but everyone's different. So.
I mean, I think that's great advice, and it's actually a bit different than what we sometimes hear out of elites who maybe are suffering injury or something like that. So I think it's good to hear. We have lots of questions here in the chat room.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was going to say, you also kind of experienced that same thing of not being able to run Lake Sonoma this year.
Yeah.
But then kind of getting there in a different.
Oh, I had a great time not running 50 miles. That was amazing.
but it gave you like a good opportunity to kind of, you know, be there in a different capacity and still be like connected to that.
Right.
And still eat everything. It was awesome.
You're like, I can still eat at the aid stations, right?
Right. It was a unique perspective that it was actually one of the very first times that I actually got to crew and pace a little bit because I was filming, but mostly crew. It was nice. It was unique because you had done it for me for years, and it was a great time for me to kind of return the favor. Injuries suck. You know, there's no denying that injuries suck because you want to be out there racing, but at the same point, I love that you talked about getting back involved in the sport. Just because you're injured doesn't mean you can't. You know, you shouldn't go and hang out. You know, even just hanging with people is good. Let's get to some of these questions.
Yeah, tons of questions in the chat room. Question from Tim in the chat room. Amelia, what did you do for training while you were injured?
Oh man, all of the things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. No, I'm joking. So initially with the femur, I swam with a pool buoy between my legs, and that was all I could do for like 3 weeks, and that's really, really boring. Really, really boring. And like the arm bike, you know, at the gym, which is also really awful. But so what I did with the femur was I started also, because I needed endorphins, I started doing things like the assault bikes or the Airdynes. So I started biking with just one leg and 2 arms, and then I would just do the arms. And then I would do the ski erg, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, but it's basically a rower upright and you pull down on one leg. So I wouldn't put any weight on the right leg. In hindsight, when I'm looking back on this, if I can like talk about the things I learned from this was all a really, really bad idea because it caused a lot of really bad compensatory issues from keeping all of my weight on one leg. So I basically overused my left leg and my left side.
That is exactly what I was going to ask. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and when I told people, and this is the other half of the story, is that trying to come back from the femoral stress fracture, I ended up with a sacral stress fracture on my left side. And they couldn't figure out, I mean, there are a number of reasons. I did everything wrong, and they were like, well, you were hopping on your leg your left leg for like 4 months. And you were also like doing all of this cross training on one leg, like jumping up and down on your left leg. and then you come back and you get a stress fracture on your left side. So with the sacrum, I basically shut it down and did nothing. I did some aqua jogging. I did some light biking with 2 legs. But I was just like, I think with the femur, I tried so hard to hold on to fitness. Like I was like, hold on to fitness, hold on to fitness. And actually speaking to a lot of runners later on, and I wish I'd known this, they're just like, just let it go. The fitness will come back. But just like the things that you will cause, the other injuries you will cause yourself by trying to like do all these weird things to work around and cross train can be even worse. So
at that point, I mean, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I wonder what would happen if you are still trying to train through an injury that basically removes the ability to use your right leg. So now you're using all your left leg. And I mean, I'm sure your upper body was maintaining the strength, just doing upper body stuff, but
and crutches. Crutches are the best arm workout ever.
I think we've had many guests who have mentioned that crutches are kind of the worst thing ever, but also one of the better things just because of arm building. But then to hear an additional stress fracture. So in total, how long were you down, essentially?
9 months. So pretty much. So April to, well, so this is funny. April to then December of this past year was when I was finally cleared. And I didn't really tell anyone about the sacral stress fracture. I'm really just starting to talk about it now. And that's really mainly because I was so afraid and embarrassed of the stigma of like doing everything wrong. You know, I was like, no, I'm coming back from the injury slow. I'm coming back from the femur slow. And I was like, nope, I am that person that sustained a second stress fracture, doing everything wrong, trying to come back for World's Toughest Mudder, trying to come back for the end of the obstacle racing season. And now I'm just like, screw it. You know, people may say like, oh, she's an idiot, or, oh, she did everything wrong, or let them talk. But like, hey, use me as a cautionary tale. Like I did things really wrong. So it was December of this past year that I was finally able to start running again, and basically was a new runner at the time. And my coach was like, we have to treat you like somebody who's never run before. So it was like, 20 minutes, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, for like the first run, and I was running like 5 miles a week, and it was really, really slow, painful process. So
you have a great blog post, which I think we've actually referenced on the show in the last couple of weeks specifically, but the idea of being down for an injury, and everyone, like you mentioned, everyone's like, oh, you'll be back to that shape that you were in. Right. But you, in many more words and more eloquently, you talked about how, why not restart? Why not be a new athlete altogether? Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how maybe is that how you took the approach of coming back?
Yeah, I think I realized what was really frustrating for me when starting to run again in December is nothing felt right, and then I would make a little bit of progress, and then I would backslide, or I got knocked over by a dog, which then caused a bone bruise, and then I was down for 3 more weeks. It was like all this like awful things, You're like, really is this happening again? But I think that for me it's this idea that I shouldn't want to get back to the athlete. I'm never going to be the athlete that I was. And I shouldn't want to. And the thing is that I may have to train differently now. I've had a series of injuries, and I have these imbalances, and I'm still running at a reduced mileage, but like maybe I can train smarter, and maybe I can train better, and just to kind of like reset the expectations too. Cause everyone's like, oh, we can't wait to see you come back and just kick everyone's ass and blah, blah. I'm like, look, like, I don't know if that's going to happen, and it's still something that I struggle with through myself. But I think for me, it's like, okay, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing that's in the past. Like now it's my opportunity to kind of like chart a new course. And it was funny. I was afraid when I put that out there, when I wrote that people are going to be like, oh, poor girl's whining that she's afraid she's not going to be on a podium anymore, blah, 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 blah. And like, no, that's not what it's about, and actually people were very responsive. They were like, look, I'm the same. Like I was a 3:30 marathoner and was injured for a year. And now I'm afraid I'm never going to be able to run a 3:30 marathon again. Like everyone has their own definition of what that place is that they want to quote unquote get back to. And I'm just saying, screw it. No, start over. So
I think it's great. We've had a number of guests on the show who have talked about that exact thing, worrying about, maybe not in so many words of like, oh, I'm worried I'm never going to be that athlete, but they'll reference it, whether it's between the lines or, that sort of thing. And I can't help but go, it's okay if you're not, like if you don't ever reach that same potential, it doesn't mean anything other than we age. And also maybe it's time to like look at it as having fun for a bit.
Well, and the funny thing is that ultra running, as you know, or any type of endurance racing is so hard on the body, and careers can be so bright and so brief. And then, like it's very, like there are very few people that have very long, illustrious careers. So it's like, all right, take what you've done, enjoy it, and then have fun, so. And
what we're doing is crazy. It's always, we have to remember that running 100 miles is normal amongst our community and our friends. The reality is it's not really normal to go and do that.
It's not for your health. It's not like you're claiming you're going to live longer because you're running 100 miles. No.
Right.
Completely. Lots of questions. I don't want to skip out before we move into the post show, but go ahead, babe.
Yeah, sure. There's a question from Amber in the chat room. When you started running again, did you also include PT, strength training, and stretching?
Yes. I have enough PT exercises where I could probably do them for about 23 hours a day. And I mean, honestly, like if I could get a degree in PT right now, I think I could just ace my exams. But yes, so I've definitely had to, it's all physical therapy, it's all strength. And for me, it's actually the strength part has been hard because I have a mental block on it, especially with the sacral stress fracture, like lifting, like deadlifting, pulling things from the floor, squatting. It's been a very big mental block for me. So that's actually been more challenging than the running, to be honest. But I'm really being diligent about all those things.
Yeah, because you're 6 months into the restart. So I can imagine there's still plenty of like, well, is this strong enough yet? Or do I need to build it up? I imagine there's lots of that kind of stuff.
Oh, and all the time. And I'm like, am I out of the quote unquote danger zone? I don't know. I'm only really running like 45 miles a week right now, which people are like, oh, that's so low. And I'm like, screw you. But
it's not low because both of us are like,
I'm like,
wow, that's crazy.
That was my week last week. I'm tired.
She's running hard.
Well, but then that's the issue with the comparison is you look at other people, you go in Strava and people are like, well, I ran 120 last week. And you're like, So, anyway.
Yeah, a question from Charles in the chat room. How did Amelia get her stoke back after being injured, or did you lose your stoke at all?
Like, sorry, maybe I don't know what stoke means exactly, but like desire or
Amelia, it's stoke. Yeah, desire is
excitement.
I think you'll need to learn this word if you want to join us back in the ultra running world. It's all stoke. Yeah, I would say desire.
Yeah, desire.
Yeah.
So if anything, the injury actually like fired up my desire. And I think that for like, especially in the same, like, it's just like, all right, I'm ready to go. Like you have to, right now I'm like, I want to race. And I have to have people like, be like, you're not ready for a 50K yet. Your longest run has been 14 miles. Hold your horses. So yeah.
I mean, just talking recently, you finally got a chance to race again. Yeah. I mean, I know that I saw the update to that. What was it like to toe the line? You ran a half marathon, and you could probably tell us a little bit about that. But what was it like to come back to an event, whether or not you were competitive or not?
It was awesome. It was just so good. I just needed mentally to get to a start line, to get to a finish line. And, it was a local trail race up throughout Marin. Beautiful. One of like my favorite courses put on by a great little company there. And like 85 people that run the race. But it was really for me, like a good low-key way to enter back into, and just like crossing the finish line. I was so afraid I was never going to cross another finish line. Like there were points in this past year where I was like, I'm never going to cross another finish line. Yeah. And so that was really key for me, just kind of like a confidence builder.
And let's get a couple more because I know that I don't want to skimp out.
Sure. There's been a lot of questions asking who your current coach is. And then there's also a question from Plant Positive Running. A question for Amelia. Did you have a coach while you injured yourself?
Okay, so David Roche is my coach, and he's phenomenal.
Roach.
Yes, and he understands my neurotic ways.
I feel like many people have talked about Roach on the show. He's been on the show very briefly.
Yeah.
We've got to get him back on, but everyone talks about how he just understands every athlete's needs, regardless of what they are, whether it's Pop-Tarts or cookies.
I mean, my training log is pretty much like a diary of everything that's wrong in my life. And so he's pretty like much a therapist and a coach. So yes, I actually started working with him like 3 weeks before the stress fracture happened. So it's not at all he came into a broken Amelia situation. So, I wish that before that I was just kind of winging it. So.
And he's still your coach.
He's still my coach, yes. So,
Sweet.
I mean, we took a break, obviously, when I wasn't running for 9 months, because unless he was going to coach me through aqua jogging, which really I did need an aqua jogging coach, then, wasn't going to be helpful.
So at this point, just for the year, are you planning on just gradually increasing mileages and as you can and as strength comes back, picking and choosing things that you want to do? I mean, obviously goals will probably adjust over the year, but anything plan-wise?
I've learned to not put big goal races on the calendar if you're not yet ready for them. So I'm planning on actually getting into some of the shorter obstacle racing again. So I will be getting into some more Spartan racing again this year and Tough Mudder. And then the ultras will probably come because those are shorter. So I can do a 9-mile Spartan race now, but looking to like 50K, 50 mileage and stuff is going to take me longer. So looking probably like fall. So if anyone has good suggestions, hit me up.
We are going to have a lot of viewers that come from both sides of this world, whether it's OCR from Ultra. And I think we're going to move into the post here, but I think a nice last question before we get into the quickie question quiz will be for advice for ultra runners who maybe are looking at dabbling in obstacle racing, or obstacle racers who are looking at dabbling in ultra. As someone who's jumped both sides of the fence there, we've had Max King on the show before, who's also done that. Do you have advice for one side or the other to enjoy the other sport?
Yeah, so for ultra runners looking at obstacle racing, I tell them there's going to be a huge learning curve. You're going to fail miserably on the obstacles, and expect that. And it's humbling. And so a lot of people do it and they suck, and then they walk away and they're like, that's not for me. But like, you learn really quickly. And if you can pick that up, then like you can be unstoppable out there. So I tell them, like, give yourself a few races to like get acclimated to it, and then make a decision whether or not you like it. For obstacle racers going into ultra running, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what to do with your arms for Sean O'Brien. I was like, what do I do with my arms?
Do you stop and just like do like 50 push-ups at mile 45? I gotta do this. I gotta do it.
I think it was Billy Yang was there at Sean O'Brien, and I think at some point in the video when he was singing, I was like, I don't know what to do with my arms right now. But yeah.
I can imagine that you just get crew members to hold a bar and you just do pull-ups or something. It's a strength for all three. That's an amazing piece of advice.
Yeah.
But you also nailed it with ultra runners or long distance runners looking to do OCR. The one OCR event that I did, I went, never again. I hurt worse after that than after a 50 miler, because it's full body. I mean, I also probably should have learned to do a pull-up of some sort before I did it, but it certainly was not easy. Certainly not easy. Well, major respect, Amelia. Honestly, it's refreshing to hear an elite who's conquered their sports, who's had an injury that's taken them completely out of it, talk a bit about coming back and being able to start from scratch. It gives all of us a little bit of hope who do suffer from injury at some point in their career, or are currently going through some sort of setback. It's good to know that there is always light. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. And Amelia, this is going to be cool to see what happens next. I mean, obviously, please keep us posted on the show and all that good stuff. For those who are watching live, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. For those who are watching live,
we are going to be doing a post show with Amelia. We're going to be asking all of the questions. There's still a handful of questions that we did not ask during the main show. We always run out of time. And if you would like to join us for the post show and ask those questions maybe you didn't get answered, please consider joining patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to all of our post shows with our special guests. And tonight we're going to have Amelia for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and she's going to answer all the questions that you have yet to ask.
There we go. I'll also shotgun a beer. No, I'm joking.
Oh my God. I did that in my Instagram story. I just did that in my Instagram story last week, and it's been 16 years since I've done that, and it will probably be another 16 before.
As I'm also sitting in my bed right now, that would also not be. Hey, everyone's joining me in my bed right now.
Shotgun and beers, Pop-Tart beers, or
toaster pastry. I think there'd be a lawsuit if it was called Pop-Tart beer.
Yeah, right. Pop-Tart, can't say the name, not sponsored.
Right.
But before we move into that post show, where all of you can join us, and those of you who are on Patreon, the link is already posted. So go visit patreon.com/thegingerrunner. It's already there. So we'll see you in just a couple seconds. But as with all new guests on the show, we have a little thing called the Quickie Question Quiz. It's a series of rapid fire questions. They're very easy and basic. Amelia, you don't have nothing to worry about, but you just give me the thumbs up when you are ready to go, and I will just start rapid firing through them.
Let's do this.
Cool. What was your very first race?
The Wisconsin Half Marathon. Only road race I've ever run.
Favorite running movie?
Cool Runnings? Is that a running movie?
It's not.
Has the word running in it.
It has the word running.
It's kind of a running movie because like the bobsledders run and.
I'm glad you remember what the movie is about.
Oddly enough, every time you ask yes that question, I keep like waiting for that answer because that might be my answer.
That was awesome. I'm so glad someone finally said Cool Runnings, the bobsled movie. But it's a classic John Candy Disney movie, so go look it up. The question is normally trails or road, but for you, I will say OCR or Ultra. It's going to be a tough answer for you.
Oh, God, that's like choosing your favorite child.
You can say both.
I don't have either. I think it's both. It's tough. It's
you can say Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings is the answer.
Great. Current favorite place to run?
My home trail is Rancho San Antonio. You'll see me bombing around there every single day. It's like amazing home.
Also, I forgot. We're both born in Portland.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey.
Forgot about that. Bucket list race.
Barkley.
Guilty pleasure TV show.
Total Divas and anything relating to the WWE.
That's so rad. Also, Glow is coming out on Netflix. I just saw the trailer for that. Glow.
No.
Glamorous Ladies of Wrestling. Favorite pre-race meal?
Pop-Tarts. That's why I was like not over the question.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
Ice cream.
Cool.
Only thing I can really stomach post-races, actually.
And so this question I'll dovetail. That's not an accurate use of the word, but
I'll segue.
Not even. No, I shouldn't have even said it because it doesn't make any sense. It could be a two-part answer for you. The question is, what are your current running kicks? So I will say current running kicks for an Ultra and current running kicks for an OCR.
For OCR, I run in the Reebok All-Terrain series, and actually for an Ultra or for some races, I'll run in those. And then for Ultras, I actually have new concept model test things from Reebok that they're looking for the future that I'm testing out. So
sweet.
Stay tuned.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you passed. That's it. Yay. Congratulations.
You win.
You win a beer that you already have open that's near you.
That's expired.
Expired. That's our grand prize. So thank you, Amelia Boone, for joining us on tonight's show. It's always it's always great to have you on the show, but this is the first time we've had you on the show, so it's awesome to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And for those of you who are watching live, stick around because we're going to be doing a post show with Amelia. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month. You can join us for that. If you are a Patreon supporter, we'll see you in just a couple of seconds. If not, you don't have to be, but we'll see you every Monday because every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific, we do a live show right here. And next week, we have Chris Mocco, fresh off of a huge victory at UROC this last weekend. So that'll be real fun. And
you should do a show with both Chris and I on it together because it would be really awkward and hilarious.
We can bring Chris on right now. Chris, I think he was actually in the chat room for a little bit.
He's actually here.
Oh, yeah, Chris.
That was like me carrying him like a baby.
Oh, look.
He's much smaller than you would anticipate. Actually, he's much taller than you would anticipate. He's a tall dude. But the Mako show will be on next week's Ginger Runner Live, so that should be a real blast. And Amelia, if you want to come back and make things awkward, you're invited.
Excellent.
We'll do the post show here with Amelia in just a couple of seconds.
And for those of you who haven't read the blog post we were referencing of Amelia's, Amelia, where can they find that?
Yes, you can find my website is ameliabooneracing.com. My links to my blogs are through there. You can find me on Twitter at Amelia Boone, Instagram, ARBoone11. The links floating around out there. So
go find it, read it. It's worth your time. It's a great blog, and there's lots of really good posts that she posted over the last couple of months, especially. So go show Amelia some love on social media. Thank you for being on the show. As always, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We'll see you in just a little bit if you are joining for the post show. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. That's it, guys. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and part of the hardest. I know I am. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Ginger Runners.